Okay, so here I am at the glorious training dummy because you're a dummy and you need to learn. That's okay. I'm a dummy too. We're all really doing it. So figure out why you're here. First thing, you're here because you want to do Frost dual wield tanking. This is tailored to the Frost dual wield tank. Unorthodox. Most people are going blood, or they're going frost damage, or they're going unholy damage. I will say blood is the safe bet. Unholy is the DPS spec, and then Frost dual wield is kind of that weird one that you're not going to see too often, but it is a lot more fun. So if you're already reading guides on Wowhead or on Icy Veins or whatever about Frost DK DPS, it's not really that different. You're just wearing tanking gear, and then your mindset is on tanking instead of DPS. So a couple things that I'm going to explain first. The first is the gear, right? So I'm using completely tanking gear. And my weapons aren't perfect, I admit. But if you go through the gear, right, I'm using the NG goggles, and I'm using the badge neck. I have 2-piece of the Valorous, that's the 25-man DK set, tier 7. I'm using the Valor token back piece. I'm lucky enough to have the best in slot for the chest already from Nax, the best in slot Valor token bracers, Sword of Courage, the Grass Cutter, the Sigil of Awareness. This is a very good sigil. It increases your base DPS by a lot every time you obliterate, and you're gonna. So I'll go into this. It's a very obliterate forward idea, and we want to focus on that. I'm using the Sonic Booster because it gives you the stamina that the Essence of Gossamer would give you, but you're not worried about mitigation right now because the phase is so easy. So I use Sonic Booster because you get that once a minute AP boost. It's 430 attack power. It's nothing to scoff at. Now, Seal of the Pantheon gives you an armor boost on use, and that's actually good because armor feeds back into your DPS as evidenced by this talent right here. So bladed armor, right? It increases your attack power by 5 for every 180 armor value you have, and so this will increase that by 3570. Do the math, 3570, and just use the ratio. Do stoichiometry here to figure that out, right? But you get a boost of your AP whenever you activate this trinket, so it's not just a mitigation trinket, and that's an important detail. But it's also providing the defense rating I need to get 540. So I'm keeping it for now. Once I have best in slot, meaning once I have the Broken Promise weapons, they both have a lot of defense on them, so I'll be able to swap the trinket off and still maintain my expertise and hit caps. Next, I'm using the Heroism Ring. I'm using Signet of the Accord, pretty good from Sarth 2 Drake, I want to say. Sabatons of Endurance. This is the best in slot boot for a Frost DK. The bolstered legs are good. The better one comes from Malagos, but that's okay. These are actually really good. The Ablative Chitin Girdle. This one is best in slot belt. And the gloves, which are best in slot. The tier 7 hands. So the needs are hit, expertise, and then any other strength you can pick up. And that means that you have some numbers you want to shoot for. If you look at your melee stats, you want to shoot for 9% hit is like pretty good. Most people will shoot for 6% hit. And I think that rating is 183. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure your hit rating should be around 183. So I'm going above and beyond here. I have a lot of hit, but that's good because that means that as you're sitting here hitting this dummy, you're not missing very much, which is great. You don't want to run up and miss like 5 times in a row. It's not good for your threat. Okay, crit chance is very low, but this is a tank spec / tank meta. So crit is better if you're DPSing, but if you're tanking, it's more about strength. Expertise, this is a very important stat not to be overlooked, and it's why I choose the gear that I do. It's why I select my best in slot the way I do, but expertise should be 6% when you look at the reduction. Right now, the rating is 178. I believe the number you want is 173 or 165. I can't quite remember exactly, but basically you want to have around this value, Okay, so 25 expertise, 26 expertise is pretty good. Those are your two important values if you're dual wield tanking as a Frost. You want to have high enough hit rating and high enough expertise. If you cannot get those stats, it's not worth it. You're going to miss too much. Okay, and you certainly don't want to miss on your yellows and on too many white hits overall. Butchery, Subversion, Bladed Armor, Dark Conviction, into Frost, Improved Icy Touch, Runic Power Mastery, Black Ice, Nerves Cold Steel, Annihilation, Icy Talons, Killing Machine, Chill of the Grave, Endless Winter, Glacier Rot, Rime, Merciless Combat, and this is for extended fights, I'll explain in a minute. Improved Icy Talons, skipping this row, Unbreakable Armor, Blood of the North, Threat of Thessarian, Frost Strike, Guile of Gorefiend, Tundra Stalker, and finally Howling Blast. And we're not taking anything in Unholy. So that's part of the reason why you need good hit rating, because you're not taking Virulence. So the reason why I'm making this video is to explain priorities and how to get your parses better, right? You want to parse better, not just as a tank, but also as a Frost DPS player. And I admit my parses aren't there yet. If you look at my item level, they're getting there, right? But if you don't cross certain thresholds, if you don't have good weapons and you don't have hit and expertise, it's going to be a struggle. My tanking parses are quite good, and they're going to get really good pretty soon. But when you're fighting a boss as a tank and it's single target, your opener is, in the complicated way, you want to buff yourself completely and snapshot everything and then start the fight. In the simple way, such as if you're just doing a trash mob that's a single target, you just run up an Icy Touch, Plague Strike, puts both diseases on the target. Blood Plague is one of them, which is a dot, and Frost Fever, which is very important because it reduces their attack speed and their ranged speed. So notice, when you use Icy Touch, you're not only putting a dot on them, but you're also reducing their attack speed, which is important. Okay, now, you open up with those two because Icy Touch gives you a lot of snap threat. The next thing you do on a single target is begin obliterating, okay? And if you notice you use all your runes, you're gonna get these cooldowns appearing over the abilities. You can actually subvert the cooldown by hitting your blood tap or by hitting your Empower rune weapon, and that will get you the runes you need to use more obliterates. Obliterate is the bread and butter of the spec. It's the meaning of life for Frost DK. Obliterate actually feels really good to use, and it opens up the door to other things. You'll notice I have these effects going on underneath the character, and this is just a power aura actually. I don't use weak auras, and so in my case I have two buffs that I want to be aware of at all times and make sure that I correctly react, because Frost DPS and even tanking is about reaction to your procs. The first proc is Freezing Fog, which directly stems from Rime. Whenever you use Obliterate, it has a chance to create this effect, the Freezing Fog effect. And when Freezing Fog is, when it's procced, you have a free Howling Blast. It costs no runes. So you'd be a fool not to use it if there are multiple targets that will get hit by it. If you notice, when I use it on a single target, it does about 1600 damage, right? So even if it is free for me, it's not really worth the global cooldown, because 1500 damage just doesn't compare to Obliterate. So that's the first thing I did in Power Rose, was create a buff called Freezing Fog, and the effect is this Icy Chill above, and that just tells me that I have a free Howling Blast to use. That takes priority on trash, that takes priority on a boss fight if there are multiple targets, because it's free and it's not going to last forever. So that's number one. Number two is Killing Machine, and this is going to proc a lot. It's going to appear a lot. So don't let it be obnoxious. But Killing Machine basically makes your next, let's go ahead and read it. It makes your next Icy, Howling Blast, or Frost Strike a crit. You want to make sure that you consume this. If you let this expire, it'd be pretty crazy, because I don't know what you're doing if you somehow don't manage to use one of those things in 30 seconds. But anyway, there is a priority system in place, right? And the question is, how do you trigger this? It's just melee attacks. So as a Frost dual wielder, you're going to be triggering this quite a bit, and that's going to be very exciting. It's going to make you crit a lot more often. So that's kind of the cycle of this spec and this playstyle, is that you're hitting stuff fast, you're proccing things, and then you're making decisions. So right now you can see that it's procced and it keeps re-proccing, right? This effect is still here. And in a fight, you're gonna see that quite a bit, because with raid buffs and so on, you're gonna crit and you're gonna do a lot more white hits, and you're just gonna notice it. So you consume it in your Frost Strike spending, right? And let's kind of play out what this feels like against a boss. So you're fighting them and you want to be obliterating as much as possible. Now you're locked out because you're missing a rune. And if you're missing a rune, look at that. See, I have a free Howling Blast with 12 seconds. Do I use it? It consumes a global cooldown. But notice that it also consumed the killing machine. So if there are multiple targets, you just got a free crit and a no rune cost Howling Blast. So that would definitely be the move. That would be the move. Let's continue. So we keep our dots on the target. Okay. And notice we don't have the runes. We can create them by using these cooldowns. Buff ourselves with Unbreakable Armor. That gives us strength. And we just got a free crit Frost Strike there. And if I had to choose between using Frost Strike and Obliterate, I'm using Obliterate. Yeah. I'm not going to sit here doing nothing because I have full runic power. So the way it feels as a tank is you're fighting the single target mob, you're on the boss, whatever. You're hitting Obliterate as much as possible, and then you don't have the runes. You don't have the cooldowns to give you the runes, so you start spending your runic power until those runes come back, and then you use Obliterate again. And you see I get a free crit there, and so it just cycles around like that. I actually rarely use my blood runes, and the reason for that is you need a blood for Death and Decay, which is debatably good on a single target. I mean, it's obviously meant to be a spread between multiple targets. I find that trying to use it just steals the Frost and the Unholy runes. And that, for me, that just pulls away from the rhythm, but I'm gonna have to do more study of other parses. As of now, from my research, the top parsing players are focusing on their Obliterate and their Frost Strike. Basically those two things. And so for that reason, I try not to use this. It throws off the rhythm. Now, if I do, yeah, you're adding dot damage, so that's not bad. And you can't even use it for another 30 seconds anyway. So I think as an opener, it's fine, right? You buff yourself. I can't Obliterate. I use blood tap. Now I get a free Obliterate. And that's what we want. We want as many Obliterates in the fight as we possibly can get. If you're stuck choosing, choose Obliterate. Do not randomly select something else just to fill the space if you know that Obliterate's about to come up. Use it as soon as it becomes available, as soon as you get that rune. Yeah, the other part of Rime that's very important and why the Obliterate synergy is so important. When you cast Obliterate, it has that 15% chance to reset the cooldown on Howling Blast. So by using it all the time, you're basically opening up the opportunity to get that free Howling Blast. And if you were choosing between stuff, like if you were going, oh, Obliterate's down, what do I do? Well, try to get it back up. Try to use your cooldowns to activate more Obliterates, because it's gonna feed into the free Howling Blast. So this increases Blood Strike and Frost Strike damage. Most of the time, you're using Frost Strike. But one thing that comes in handy with Blood of the North is that when you hit with Blood or Pestilence, specifically Pestilence, it's a 100% chance that it converts the Blood rune into a Death rune the next time it comes around. And that can be used as any type. So you get a free wild card when you use Pestilence or when you use Blood Strike. So it's kind of, you have to work on this, but if you do focus on it, you know, your Obliterate's down, you have no cooldown, use one, whatever, but I don't get the rune I need, okay. So then you use Blood Strike. And the next time it comes around, it's gonna be a Death rune. So notice it's not a red rune anymore, it's a Death rune. And Death runes can be used for anything. So that obviously feeds into your Obliterates. It gives you more Obliterates. Yet another reason why it's important to open up with Pestilence, because just by virtue of casting it, you're ensuring that you have an extra rune that can be given to Obliterate. So that's why Blood of the North is an important talent. You're thinking, spend your runic power on Frost Strike. Cool. You have no procs going on. What do you do next? Okay, here comes Obliterate. Great. There's a free Howling Blast. Go ahead and use it. Obliterate again. Okay, buff yourself. Frost Strike. Now everything's down. In that moment, when you don't have the runes, you don't have the runic power, you use Blood Strike, and what's going to happen is the next time it regenerates, it's going to be a death rune. And that's why you're going to see a couple times during a fight, people are using Blood Strike, because they want to convert the rune. This whole runic thing can be really confusing, but there's an internal rhythm that they created in the game, and I think it's really wonderful. It feels good. It's satisfying when you get it right, and you'll notice that your DPS goes up dramatically when you get it right without it being gimmicky. So right there, you get a free one, you use it, 3,000 damage with no rune cost. You want to spend that. Once you get the simplicity of this down, it's just a matter of timing and converting your cooldowns into runes for Obliterate and knowing when to use what, right? So right here, I'm just spamming Frost Strike because I know that the rune for Obliterate's coming back. I get a free crit on Frost Strike, good. I'm just gonna spend it until my runes are gone. Then I'll use Blood Strike just in time for Obliterate to come back. And then once that death rune comes in, I'm gonna have that free Obliterate. Let's say you're running into a pack of mobs for trash. You open up with Icy Touch, Plague Strike, Pestilence, okay? Maybe D&D, maybe reset with this. Howling Blast for sure if you get a crit. And you'll see that little power aura effect on the bottom. And now you're just doing your single target rotation. Here it is again, right? Killing Machine, you get a free Howling Blast crit. Boom, definitely use it. On trash, this is huge. Buff yourself, make sure that your buffs stay up. So you get these, you use Pestilence, you know that you're gonna get a death rune. Maybe you'll even use it to make sure you get 2. Every single time you see Killing Machine while you're doing trash or killing AoE, use Howling Blast immediately, as soon as it comes up. Right there, you get a free Howling Blast, you're definitely gonna use it. So, in terms of philosophy, you have a big group. Let's look at the procs. Got your opener, spread your diseases, death and decay, spending your runic power until Obliterate comes back. There it is, still no procs, so I'm just gonna focus on my single target. I'm not gonna waste it. I'm not gonna waste anything until I see a proc. Let's try this again. I'm gonna spread those diseases once I get the blood. There it is. Use Obliterate. There it is, proc, Howling Blast. Keep obliterating, Frost Striking, wait for that Killing Machine. There's a free Howling Blast. Spread my diseases again. Now I get both, that always feels good. And this is the cycle, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, you get a proc, boom, use it. And it's back to the game. There's a proc, use it. Ooh, Scam Likely.